Good morning, good evening. Welcome to the Commitment to Equity Institute session, in which we're going to be presenting the fiscal incidence studies for China, India, and Indonesia. And before we do that, I wanted to introduce you to what the Institute is about. My name is Nora Lustig. I am the Samuel Z. Stone Professor of Latin American Economics and the founding director of the Commitment to Equity Institute at Tulane University, based in New Orleans, USA. So let me start by sharing our homepage of the Institute because I want to introduce you to the type of work that we do and invite you to then continue looking at it and in your own time. When you go to the homepage, you will see what our mission is. You will see the handbook, which is used to produce studies that follow pretty much a similar methodology. So we have comparable data in our data center. And here, as you can see in the map, there is pretty wide coverage of in all the regions of the world. And the green ones are ready. India is a paper that's in making, which would probably soon be part of the green group. So whenever you click on a country, you're taken to the country's publications. But in order to sort of proceed more quickly, let me just show you how you get to the data in the data center. You click on the data center tab, you download the standard indicators, and you will be taken to another screen, which I will show you in a minute. Here it is. And this allows you to, well, here's the contents and the contents of that we have housed in the CQ standard indicators in the data center. We also are going to be housing harmonized microdata for people to actually work directly with the microdata if they want to change assumptions or try new fiscal incidence studies. And that will be housed in Harvard Dataverse. In the next 6 months, it will be available for the public. For now, we have housed now in the data center the indicators in this Excel format. And for example, if you're interested in learning what's happened to the Gini coefficient through fiscal policy, you can click on that item and it takes you to this sheet in which you show the different Gini coefficients for each one of the income concepts that we use. I'm sure now when our presenters start, they will show you a little more what these income concepts mean. And I want to end by saying that we are very fortunate that together with the World Bank and Oxfam, we proposed to have one of our indicators to be included in the SDG monitoring system. And so now the fiscal redistribution indicator, which is the difference between the Gini coefficient, the pre-fiscal one, and the post-fiscal with consumable income, is target SDG 10.4.2 of the SDG monitoring system. And it's already part of the formal website that the UN has to track progress on the SDGs. And this is an indicator that will allow the users to track how much fiscal redistribution is attained through the taxes and transfers, and not only at a particular point in time, but also what we hope is that the production of this data will continue and it will be possible to track how it evolves over time. So now let me get back to the panel, and I'm going to introduce the speakers. We're delighted to have two of our speakers. The third one will submit her recording separately, but we have with us Sridhar Kundu, who's a senior research analyst at the Indian School of Business, and he will present the paper on fiscal policies and its impact on income distribution in India, a paper he did jointly with Minor Cabrera. Second, we have Sailesh Tiwari, who's a senior economist at the World Bank, and he will present a paper revisiting the impact of taxes and spending on poverty and inequality in Indonesia. And thirdly, separately, Wang, assistant professor in Nanjing Audit University, she will present her paper, The Impact of Taxes and Transfers on Income Inequality, Poverty, and the Urban, Rural, and Regional Income Gaps in China. Like I said, she is unable to join us today, but we will add her presentation to the video. So without further ado, Sridhar and Sailesh, the Zoom is yours. Thank you.
So, good evening from Delhi, Nora and Sailesh. So, I'm going to share my screen. So, just let me show that whether my screen is visible. Is my screen visible? Yes. Thank you for the opportunity given to me, and I am going to present the paper on India, Fiscal Policies Impact on Income Distribution in India. This is a part of the study which was conducted by CPGA with a commitment to Equity Institute. And me and my co-author, my friend Minor Cabrera from CEQ Institute are part of this paper. Without yes. So, as all of you know that in India challenges are many. So inequality is one of the greatest challenges. As you know that 70% of Indians stay in villages. Most of the villages they are not connected with road, electricity, drinking water. So this is one of the major challenges in India that the government needs to address. So each and every government which have come after the independence, they try to make their policies to address all these issues. But as far as now, we are sort of achieving addressing this issue on inequality. There is a rising gap between rural and urban. As all of you know that during the COVID time, there is a huge reverse migration happened from urban to rural areas. So most of the unskilled labor force, those who are part of the rural sector, they go to urban areas in search of jobs. And whenever there is a stop in economic activities during the COVID time, they came back. So there are many challenges in rural areas, even if unemployment, illiteracy, there are many more challenges, even if health issues, there are many more challenges. So every government has the responsibility to address these issues. Now we'll explain the fiscal structure, what is the fiscal architecture in India. As all of you know that in India we have a three-tier governance structure. There are 28 states and 8 union territories. But most of the, as by the constitution, as for the constitution, that the union government has the maximum resource generating capacity. The states have only 40% of the total resources. So 28 states, but there are total, the resources generating capacity of the state government is less. So as it is a federal system, there is a resource transfer from the union to state government, from the state government to local government. So this is, the methodology through which the resource transfer takes place from the union to state or state to local bodies that is determined by the finance commission. So that is the overall fiscal architecture. But the challenges of the government is that there are the low sides of the government. We don't have enough resources. Government, the capability to generate resources through taxes are quite less. So taxes is both union and state government combined tax revenue, the 18% total India's gross domestic product. But the expenditure is also quite high, about 28%. So the fiscal gap, that's the fiscal deficit, which is around 9 to 10%, and that is mostly borne by the borrowings. So therefore, every time, most of the time, that government has to borrow either internally or externally. As a result, the debt to GDP ratio is as much as high as 70%. And even if in the expenditure side also, most of the expenditure that is going towards the non-development programs, just like interest, expenditure, interest receipts, and defense expenditure. There are many expenditure, but the developmental expenditure is quite less, about 50% of the total expenditure. So the challenge before the government, how to, with the limited resources they have, how to address all the challenges like poverty, deep-rooted poverty and inequality in India. So coming back, how the government functions with respect to addresses the issue of poverty and inequality, the CQ study as a suitable methodology, concept. There are four, as far as India is concerned, we have used for four different income concepts. There are the market income plus pensions, disposable income, consumable income, and final income. All these income concepts have been developed with the inclusive of all the fiscal instruments. So fiscal instrument, for example, from the market income plus pensions to when you go to the disposable income, you add the direct transfers, which is just like either cash transfer, non-cash transfers, and direct taxes. You subtract the direct taxes. Then come to the consumable income. Disposable income. From the disposable income to consumable income, you add the indirect subsidies, then subtract the indirect taxes. From the consumable income to the final income, you add the public expenditure on education and health. So all these five different income concepts, definitely you have four different income concepts. You have the four different income distributions. So naturally, whenever there is a distribution, you can estimate the inequality, you can estimate the poverty ratio using a national or international poverty line. So you can on all these four different income categories, you have four inequality measures and four different poverty measures. So in this way, you can see that how the government or fiscal instruments are used to either change in inequality or change in poverty ratio. But coming to the next points. So in order to estimate this change in inequality or change in poverty ratio, there is a robust database which is collected by national sample survey organizations. We have used the largest sample survey organization on household consumption expenditure. It was available to 2011-12. After that, household consumption expenditure survey has not been conducted. So we have the latest data on 2011-12, and this is used as the disposable income at the household level. Then from the household level, we have estimated for the individual level. And to support this disposable household consumption expenditure survey, we have used some more surveys by the NSS, that's the employment or unemployment, social consumption expenditure on education and health, NCER data that is on income, household development, human development survey, which also provides the income survey data. And some of the government finances data that we have used, India Public Finance Statistics and Combined Finance Revenue and Accounts, analysis of budget expenditure on education, second is national health accounts, the third is the national health accounts. So these are the data sources have been used to support the fact that to estimate the inequality with the different income concepts. Okay, so which fiscal instruments have been covered in this study? So first, coming back to the taxes. Taxes we have covered as much as taxes. As you know, there are two taxes: direct and indirect taxes. About 67% of the total indirect taxes have been covered, because indirect taxes we have lots of information, which is value-added taxes, state excise, union excise. I want to let you clear that these are the taxes which have been not part of the system when we calculated with the 2011-12 data. But as you know that our tax policy, indirect tax policy have been changed, we have not taken into account this changed indirect tax structure, which is the GST. So in the direct taxes, we have included income taxes and corporate taxes is not part of that. So 17% of the total direct taxes have been included and in this study. Coming back to the expenditure. In the expenditure also, as you know, that total expenditure is 50% of the total expenditure is going towards the development expenditure. And with the from the development expenditure, we have covered almost 20% of the total expenditure have been covered in your study. Most of the development expenditure, just like the social protections, direct transfers like MGNREGA, which is one of the important rural development program by the government, with both union and state government sharing of the resources for this development program, and this expenditure on education and health, and expenditure on public distribution system, which it is a scheme where subsidized food, electricity, subsidized food, kerosene, provided to the people living below poverty line. And also electricity subsidy also provided with different income slabs that electricity provided by the union and state government both. Next, so what is the impact? This is the result that when, as you know, that when you impose a tax, definitely that reduces your disposable income. So definitely tax has a negative impact on poverty. But when you are also giving some kind of subsidies, either direct subsidies or indirect subsidies, or some of the government expenditures, then definitely your disposable income increases. So combined impact, this is the combined fiscal impact on inequality. It has come down. As you know, that we have devised the four income concepts. So from market income plus pensions to fiscal final income, so poverty, Gini coefficient of inequality has declined from 0.367 to 0.311. And at the same time, poverty also estimated with using the three income concepts: market income plus pensions, disposable income, and consumable income, and all these three incomes. So concepts you can find from market income plus pensions to the consumable income. The poverty reduction is 23.6% to 20.1%, around 3.1 5% reduction. Next, then we'll see that what is the individual impact of different programs. First, coming to the point on the government spending on public distribution system, which is mostly this is one of the program where the poor people are mostly targeted. So in a targeted public distribution system, which was divided in early 1990s, so it was basically mostly focusing the people who are really deprived, who don't have money, to purchase a couple of meals a day. So PDS system is one of the important development program devised by the government, and most of the state governments also contribute their resources in it. So it directly provides the food, kerosene to people living in below poverty line. So directly addresses the poverty. So PDS food has the impact of inequality impact of 0.0108. The next impact also I will address that MGNREGA, which was divided in 2005. And it is mostly it was targeted towards the people who are seasonally unemployed. Basically, most of the people in the rural areas, they are main occupation in agriculture. So when their agriculture is a seasonal in nature, after 3 months, 4 months gap, there will be agriculture, they remain unemployed. So to address this seasonal inequality, MGNREGA program was devised, and it was giving direct cash to the people who are willing to work under this program. So it has a huge impact on poverty and inequality. So MGNREGA, that its marginal contribution is 0.0032. And also there all the most of the government programs, PDS, midday scheme, textbooks, and scholarships, they have all contribution to the income inequality. But I address these two issues because they address the marks, they directly address the people who are living below poverty line. Next, marginal contribution of the poverty headcount ratio. As you know that we have estimated using the national poverty line, which was devised by the then Planning Commission. So with the headcount ratio, you have you see that all the indirect subsidies, they have also positive impact because PDS is one of them. 6.6% contribution of indirect subsidies on poverty. PDS, the food subsidy, which has 4.7% of the poverty impact. MGNREGA, which is also one of the important Rural Development Program, as I already said, 1.2% of the taxation. And on some of the indirect taxes also, they are progressive in nature, because it didn't, most of the indirect taxes, just like value-added taxes, state value-added taxes, most of the essential commodities, the VAT taxes are zero. That's why, in our estimation, value-added taxes is found to be more progressive, because less amount of taxes are paid by the.
Sridhar, I'm sorry, yes, but you have 2-3 minutes left.
Yes. I'm just. So in that case, that this graph shows that total incidence of the people with a different income decile class. So the green line, which is showing the higher incidence, that is the education. Education shows the higher incidence, because people who are really deprived, they need the education, and mostly people they are availing these facilities because of the government public education system. Health is also rural health. That is also one of the important area that most of the beneficiaries are people from the rural areas. So that's why incidence on education and health is showing a little higher for the first income decile, and it is coming down towards the 10th decile. Next is that this is some of the conclusion I can draw, that the taxation system, most of the government expenditure like PDS subsidies and MGNREGA, they are really pro-poor and progressive. And value-added taxes, indirect taxes also, they are people which are below poverty line, they are paying less. So it is progressive, but some kind of systems can be developed so that they will be either they will not pay the taxes at all, so that they will be it will be more helpful for them. And midday meal scheme also is very helpful, because it attracts many people to the school education. So that's it has quite good impact. Next, I will give some kind of policy implications, that which the policy recommendations for the government. They have to more focus on this MGNREG and PDS, which have large impact on poverty and income distribution, to bridge the inequality gap between the rural and urban, between the different income sections. And they need to prioritize the education and health sector. That would be also quite important, because at present, when our health infrastructure is quite deteriorated, we don't have enough infrastructure, so public spending on this sector would be rate of high. And direct taxes, as you know, that it is very paid with only the 10th decile class, they pay the direct taxes or the income taxes. So the government needs some kind of robust taxation policy, so that at least they should get more and more tax revenue from the direct taxes. So this is from my end. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Sridhar. So the audience knows and looks forward to, when do you think the paper will be available? And we will then post it in the CEQ website. By the way, I put the link on the chat, that I hope it's available in the video recording. If not, people can look for the information in www.ceqinstitute.org. But when can we expect the great paper from Minor and you?
We have submitted the draft report to Subrat Das from CBGA to have a look at it. We are waiting for his comments, and it will be very soon. We'll submit it.
Excellent. So it will be made available through our website, hopefully in a couple of months at the most.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Sridhar. Now let's turn to Sailesh, who's going to present the results for the Indonesia fiscal incidence analysis. And Indonesia has been doing this now for several years. And I think that it's going to be very interesting to see the results, especially when you compare now 2 points in time, which is one of the advantages of having the same methodology over time.
Thank you, Nora. Greetings from Jakarta. Can you see the screen that I've shared? Excellent.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, it's not the presenter's view, is it? Okay, great. So thanks very much. I can start off exactly from where Sridhar ended. So this work is joined with the Fiscal Policy Agency in Indonesia, and it was completed last year, and it's available actually for download and on the Fiscal Policy website, Fiscal Policy Agency website, as well as the World Bank website. And I think the title is similar as well, so you can just Google it and find it. So you know, unlike as Nora mentioned, I mean, unlike the many other countries for which now CEQ exercises have been done, Indonesia is perhaps I haven't checked, but it is potentially one of the first to do it now for you know, 2 points in time. And the question came at a very interesting time for us when we embarked on this exercise for Indonesia, because the previous time, well, when we'd done this analysis, and at that time it was jointly with the CEQ Institute as well, the key finding had been that you know, all said and done, fiscal policy, you know, at least the elements of fiscal policy that we were able to capture in our analysis was not doing much for inequality in Indonesia. I think the point estimate on the inequality impact was around 2.5% Gini points. And compared to other countries we had in the CEQ set at the time, countries that were comparable to Indonesia, countries potentially that were doing really well at that time, South Africa and I think it was Brazil, particular points in time. I mean, you know, Indonesia was not having that kind of an impact. So then, I mean, that was done around 2015 using data from 2012. But since then, the government has embarked on this massive, you know, fiscal reform program, the star of which has been a significant reduction in the amounts that are being sort of spent on energy subsidies, which at that point we had made the, you know, recognized that it was not particularly well targeted, and not enough at that time was being spent on the most inequality reducing programs that are often the direct transfers that are, you know, that benefit the poor directly, right? So they've done precisely the reforms that we you know, obviously attribution is difficult, but you know, whatever we've noted in the previous exercise, they started moving in that direction. As you can see from the figure there, a significant reduction in energy subsidies, a huge push on infrastructure spending. And then, although on the top slide, it's hard to see social assistance as a share of overall sort of central government expenditures, the lower slide makes it explicit that, you know, social assistance is also expanded quite dramatically. With you know, unconditional cash transfer, which at the time of the sort of retrenchment of the energy subsidies was put in place as a temporary measure, was there for a few years, 2013, 14, and 15, and then was sort of pulled back. But you know, things like conditional cash transfer, which is the PKH program, you know, has expanded hugely. The food voucher program, which used to be a rice subsidies program that has now, you know, gradually morphed into a more, you know, sophisticated instrument, has also expanded. The health insurance program has expanded quite dramatically as well. So that's the context in which we thought, okay, you know, we did this analysis back in 2015 using 2012 data. Big reforms have happened since then. Let's see if we can, you know, do this analysis again using data from 2017 and see, you know, what we get. Obviously, from a methodological perspective, what that meant, and I'm not going to go through the income concepts, Sridhar touched upon it, and now it's fairly standard part of the toolkit. But what it meant for us to do a comparative analysis is that many of the decisions that were made back then, which were optimal for that time, we had to kind of, because we benefited from better data in the second time around, we had to then go back and make some changes there to sort of make sure that we were comparing, you know, the same sort of entities, right? Not apples and oranges. So again, the methodology is very standard. You know, a variety of income concepts that we use, and the exact sort of components of what we account for in the analysis, right? I mean, it's important to keep that in mind as well. On the expenditure side, you know, as I mentioned, the direct transfers, which includes the conditional cash transfer program that has expanded massively, and we'll see some numbers on that. The BLSM, which is the scholarship program, which is equally large in terms of budgetary outlays. Then there's the BSM BSM PIP, which is actually the scholarship program. The BLSM is the temporary unconditional cash transfer. Sorry. Raskin Rashtra, the food subsidy program, which is now better known as BPNT. The fuel subsidy program, which includes a subsidy on, LPG as well as a variety of other sort of products, electricity subsidy, and of course, health and education as well. As a share of total government expenditures, we've been able to account for, with these elements, about 54% of total government expenditures in 2012, but that was a lower number in 2017 because primarily because less was being spent on subsidies in 2017. On the revenue side, tobacco excise and value-added tax, the two sort of indirect tax components, we were able to sort of capture. And personal income tax, it's there. It was a challenge. I mean, the first time around, we tried to sort of look at personal income tax because it's an important part of the revenue sort of measure and a progressive one as well. But of course, I mean, the challenge with personal income tax we found is that, when you look at the survey and sort of try to back out the income of some of the households that are among the wealthiest, based on what you see their consumption to be, and compare that income to the tax thresholds, I mean, you wouldn't capture that many tax-paying individuals in the survey. So if we try to force it through, we would be assigning a large amount of personal income tax on a very small number of households. So we had not pushed that agenda very hard, but this time around, we tried to get some fresh data, which was kindly shared with us by the DG tax. But there were some challenges with it. So all said and done, personal income tax remains an aspiration for us, and because it's a sort of continuous engagement with the Fiscal Policy Agency, we hope to be able to sort of adequately account for that. But what you see there in terms of the proportions, the 22% and the 27%, are basically tobacco excise and value-added tax that we are accounting for in the analysis. Now, I mean, so the summary picture, I think, I mean, the comparison is interesting. So in terms of absolute sort of incidence of benefits, and these are potentially Indonesian rupiahs in trillions of rupiahs, but the note, which is, pretty small, it should have it there. So, as you can see, I mean, the comparison with 2012, between 2012 and 2017 is interesting, right? The net benefit position, for example, was fairly flat in the previous sort of round, whereas in 2017, what we begin to see is even though sort of the benefit levels are at the top, certainly with the elimination or scaling down of energy subsidies, the benefits that are going to the top have come down quite a bit in size. Value-added taxes, just because of the increase in the consumption base, is increased, and as we know, that is in absolute terms higher in the higher income groups. But it's interesting to note that at least the households in the top decile have now are no longer net beneficiaries; they are net payers into the system. And then there seems to be a slight sort of downward gradient as well, suggesting that broadly these reforms are kind of bending that curve a little bit. Seeing the same picture in an absolute sort of absolute sense, this is again benefits net of sort of outlays. I think we also accounted for out of pocket on education and health as a share of market income. Obviously, we know that for whatever benefit accrues to households, I mean, for the poor, it often ends up accounting for a lot more. That's why you've got this slight sort of progressivity across the income distribution. Interestingly, I mean, and as we might expect with the kinds of changes that have happened in the fiscal system, the gradient is much steeper in 2017, and the poor are, as a percentage of their market income, the amount that they're receiving from the fiscal system is now higher as well. Which is, I mean, it sort of foreshadows the kinds of results we might see on things like poverty and inequality. And again, I mean, social assistance is interesting, particularly for the expansion that a few programs have gone through. And mentioned the PKH program, which, I mean, there are 3 different ways of looking at this program. And I apologize, Nora, the slides, the charts and the labels are perhaps a little bit too small. But the left-hand side is the beneficiary count in the 2 years across the income distribution. Now, it's interesting. It's a targeted cash transfer program. So even in 2012, I mean, it's almost a uniform distribution, which is interesting in its own right. But over the years, it seems that the number of recipients are at least distinctly higher in the poorer segments, poorer deciles, right? And then likewise, the next chart is, I think, the absolute incidence, which is essentially the share of total amounts that are spent on these programs that are going to the different deciles. So it's compared to the green bars, which are the 2012 figures, you see that the orange bars, which are 2017, are slightly higher for the bottom 2 deciles. And then, as a share of market income, again, interesting to note that whereas in 2012 for the poorest decile, it was around almost 7% of their market income. Now it accounts for much larger for the poorest households. And then that first decile really is for Indonesia, given the rate of poverty is around 10%, 9 and change. Those are the poor households, right? So they've benefited quite a bit from this program. But then I have to apologize. That was the overall social assistance, and now this is PKH was the key element of that expansion strategy. So, the previous slide included PKH as well as a few other elements, the scholarship program and scholarship program. This is just zooming in on PKH. Again, very similar sort of picture with I guess an explicit it makes it explicit that most of what we saw there is mimicked by what we know happened in the PKH program. Energy subsidies is an interesting one to look at, given the fact that we've made such a big deal out of energy subsidies in the previous analysis. And the first thing, this is energy subsidies as a share of market income, so relative sort of incidence. And the light blue is the 2012 sort of the 12 numbers, and 2017 is the green one. So first of all, they've been cut down in size across the distribution. I mean, that's evident, significant sort of decline. And second, that slight hint of progressivity. Again, a lot of the people at the upper sort of parts of the distribution are still benefiting, but this gradient is kind of beginning to emerge in 2017, right? And we see that, breaking it down between fuel and electricity, we see that it's potentially driven to a large extent by electricity, which has been, there's been an active effort to subsidize or eliminate subsidies that were given previously to all kinds of users, and now limiting them to users that are of the low voltage, I think below 900 VA users, were often also tend to be at the lower end of the distribution. So as a share, this is again, I might have is potentially absolute incidence, actually, meaning the proportion of total benefits that go to the different parts of the distribution. And here for electricity, you note, that.
These are the concentration shares, right?
Yes, yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so
not the incidence by decile. The previous one was the incidence by decile. So the concentration shares show that still, at least in the case of fuel, quite a bit goes to the higher deciles.
To the rich, yeah. So there's still, yeah, for fuel, certainly, there's still a lot of work to be done. So overall, then moving on to the summary picture of impact on poverty and inequality, right? Comparing 2012 to 2017. So what we see is that on balance, the impact on poverty in 2017 is actually slightly lower, or half of what it was in 2012, and that's an interesting result in itself, right? So and the conclusion there, when we unpack the effect that comes through direct transfers and the indirect taxes and subsidies, that's where the answer lies, right? So with all of that expansion in direct transfers, the overall effect on poverty actually is increasing from 2 to 2.1%. which is interesting and which raises questions about poverty gap and to what extent are these benefit levels adequate. But then there's a countervailing effect, which is the fact that you've eliminated subsidies and there's that semblance of slightly better targeting. But for the poor who actually experienced this decline, for them it was salient. So that has ended up impoverishing some of them. It wasn't sort of other way of putting it could be, the expansion in direct transfers has not been fully adequate to compensate for the deterioration of welfare, if you will, of some loss of subsidies, right? Likewise, in the case of inequality, these are inequality, marginal effects, I suppose, of the different bits of inequality. So 2.9 is the overall sort of impact. And without PIT, we had a version with PIT as well, and we were trying to do the like-for-like comparison. So 2.9 for 2012 and 3.4 for 2017. So in terms of inequality, there's certainly been fiscal policy has become more equalizing, if you will. So that takes me to the final sort of slide where, again, the paper is significantly, we tease out many different results. We do simulations. We try to look at, indirect taxes, opportunities to sort of eliminate some of the exemptions and redistribute that in the form of either targeted social assistance or in the form of a hypothetical sort of transfers to households to compensate for them for their loss and all kinds of other things. But here for this presentation, just based on this very core, very standard CEQ analysis, three takeaway messages for us is that the positive spin, by the way, one way to look at it on the poverty impact earlier, as I said it, is that the transfers have not been enough to maintain or compensate for the loss of welfare due to the elimination of subsidies for the poor. But the other way of looking at it, and that links back to the overall outlays, right? The other way of looking at it is that the government has gone through all of this fiscal reform program, maintained the poverty impact, or kept overall fiscal policy poverty reducing, but done so at a significantly smaller outlay. Potentially, there's space there for the savings that came from the elimination of subsidies to have done more. But at least for what we know, for what was spent, they were able to sort of maybe channel it to infrastructure, and that's a question we get a lot. Can we look at infrastructure to sort of account for that, right? So that's the first sort of conclusion. The second is, on fiscal policy inequality. Again, we compare to Indonesia's sort of overall inequality impact to what Sridhar presented for India, to other countries in the CEQ set. As equalizing as it has become, there's still perhaps a room for improvement. And then finally, the key challenge for Indonesia, which has been well noted, is that you can think about expanding, you can think about doing more, but a key constraint is on revenue. For a country of Indonesia's development, the state, for a country of Indonesia's size, the fact that tax revenues are still sub 10%, it just does not provide that kind of a fiscal space to spend as much as the government may want to spend on many of these inequality reducing programs. With COVID, of course, a small note on COVID before I end. Indonesia, obviously, like many other countries, has responded heroically. They've effectively doubled their social assistance program. We've done simulations of poverty impact and found that, with the crisis, essentially 7 years of progress in poverty reduction was rolled back. So with their, expansion of the social assistance programs, they've been able to sort of cover some ground, but then as the crisis kind of drags on, and then, these are questions that many governments around the world are facing, and so is Indonesia, right? How long can you sort of maintain that level of spending is a key question. With that, let me stop here, Nora.
Yes, thank you. Actually, although we hadn't considered having comments here, there's a couple of things I'd like to say because this is Indonesia is a very interesting case for two reasons. One is because it's performed directly with the government, and I understand the government uses the fiscal incidence analysis with the CEQ framework for their budget planning and decision-making process. So I think it'd be interesting to learn a little more how that works from you, because this would be an example for other parts in the world of how they can use this type of exercises to guide policy. And the second thing that it's quite interesting is that the switch from the subsidies, which we always caution about, does have a negative impact on poverty, because even though they were regressive, they were unequalizing, the poor were still benefiting quite a bit. And like you said, the transfers, even though they were expanded, did not compensate for the losses with the elimination of subsidies. However, in one of your graphs, you showed that subsidies, the distribution of subsidies, still accrues quite a bit to the higher incomes, and it's not progressive. So there may still be room for improvement there in making subsidies either more progressive, or follow something that was done in Iran, replace it by a non-targeted, just a cash transfer, a uniform cash transfer, so that there's more political buy-in for such a reform, and use the savings to help the poor then through the other mechanisms that are more targeted. So I don't know if you can say anything about what the experience is in working with the World Bank on this. That could be very interesting.
Sure. No, happy to, Nora. I think,
World Bank and the government, yeah.
Yeah, no, to start with the second question, right? I mean, and that's exactly right. We've noted that in a recent public expenditure review that we've completed, and all of this work features prominently in that analysis. And in fact, actually with COVID, things may have changed a little bit, but there was certainly more work to be done. I mean, prices were starting to sort of come up in the international market, and then this question of like, has enough been done, or is there more to do on subsidies, right? It was a very pending question, and we flagged it prominently in the public expenditure review completed recently. On working with the government on this, I mean, yeah, no, I mean, we've, as you know, I mean, in the early years with the CEQ Institute, with Jan sort of being involved, we have coupled this analytical stream together with a capacity building stream as well. And over the years, I mean, we have, not only, I mean, this particular analysis actually, it's been a lot of collaboration and co-work directly with counterparts, and then what that has implied is, first, I mean, various sort of training sessions. I mean, the kinds that we've done at the World Bank, for example, we've offered it locally to technical sort of technical colleagues at the Ministry of Finance, and then on the development of analysis as well, we've done it very organically with them. And in many cases, we've found that in the various sort of policy memos that are internally produced and shared, this methodology, the insights that come from this kind of an analysis has featured into sort of internal thinking on some of these policies, right? So I think, I mean, for us, we've just it's been an important line of work for us here in Indonesia over the years, and we've put in a lot of energy, time, and resources in developing the relationships with the client, working closely with our sort of macro colleagues who have a very vibrant dialogue broadly on fiscal policy, and then also pairing the analytical side with capacity building as well as collaboration.
Excellent. Yeah, no, and you mentioned COVID, and we have been able to use our work on Latin America, for example, to assess the impact of the COVID shock and the countervailing impact of expanded safety nets, and the framework that we're using can be used precisely for analyzing these type of simulations, and that's we found it very, very helpful. And I know that you at the bank have been doing something similar for Indonesia. By the way, if people would like to see the report and the public expenditure review, I don't know if you want to paste a link, or how should they visit the Indonesia page of the World Bank because I'm sure there's going to be quite a bit of interest, especially since this meeting is taking place in Bali, in a sort of a virtual world.
Yeah.
But
I'd be happy to scramble a link and quickly, I should have prepared, but I should be able to paste a link there very quickly.
Yeah. Okay. And so I think that I don't know what I was going to ask Sridhar is that in comparison to other countries, how does India look in terms of fiscal redistribution? Have you done that?
I didn't do that comparative analysis with India with other countries.
Because it'd be interesting to see the extent to which India engages in fiscal redistribution, and although it uses the primarily a subsidy system, it's a targeted subsidy system, so it doesn't have the same issues as the one that we saw now in the case of Indonesia. So I'm going to wait until Sailesh is able to paste the link, or maybe you can send it to Samantha, and maybe she can share it with the organizers. I don't know how the organizers plan to weave together the program, but I'm sure people might be interested in. Oh, there it is. Perfect. Excellent.
Yeah, no, the link is slightly long, so I was trying to see if what might be the best way to do it.
No, that's perfect. Okay, well, thank you very much. I will copy it myself, so I have access to that as well. And I'm sure we'll be continuing the conversation in other settings. I appreciate the effort of both of you at late hours in your time zones. And I am here based now in Washington, D.C. So for me, it's the earlier part of the morning. And it's been a delightful opportunity to listen to both of you. And I hope people will also enjoy the very interesting presentations that you made today. And stay safe. And until the next time, thank you very much. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nora. Thank you, Sailesh.
Thank you, Sridhar.
Our paper analyzed the distributional impact of fiscal policy in China applying the CQ framework. As we know, since the open and reform initiated in 1978, China has experienced a very fast economic growth and social development. Using the national account data, the annual GDP growth rate equals 9.6% for the period between 1978 and 2018. Because of the faster growth, poverty incidence declined significantly, the headcount ratio using 1.9 PPP dollars per day as the poverty threshold was 88% in 1981 and was less than 1% in 2016. At the same time, income inequality increased significantly. Gini was 0.33 in 1988, and the Gini estimated using a set of recent household surveys ranges between 0.53 to 0.63 for the period between 2010 to 2012. Besides, there has been a persistent gap between urban and rural areas as well as across the economic regions. Fiscal policy is important for redistribution as a response to the rising income inequality and the persistence of the poverty pockets. In 2013, the government committed itself to reducing them through taxation, the social security system, and the cash transfers. To the best of our knowledge, the impact of taxes and the government spending on the urban-rural gap or regional disparity has not been analyzed. Given the large income gaps between urban and rural and between the richer and the poorer region, the question of how much these gaps are narrowed through fiscal redistribution is also of great importance. The research question of this paper is that we provide a comprehensive assessment of the distributional impact of China's fiscal system on the overall rural, urban, and regional income distributions, considering both poverty and degree of income inequality. We also assess the marginal contribution of each tax and social spending program on overall rural, urban, and regional income inequality. We also evaluate how the fiscal system has affected the urban-rural gap and the regional disparities. Specifically, we carry out a standard instance analysis using an accounting approach and the China Family Panel Studies 2014 survey data. On the tax side, personal income tax, contributions to Social Security, value-added tax, and consumption tax are considered. On the expenditure side, Social Security benefits, non-contributory pension, the minimum living standard scheme, the agricultural subsidy, as well as the health and education income transfers are considered. The methodology is the standard accounting approach. We construct 4 income measures, including the market income, disposable income, consumable income, and final income. When analyzing payment to tax, we consider economic instance rather than statutory instance, which relies on several assumptions about who bears the actual tax burden. When analyzing social spending programs, behavioral responses and the general equilibrium impacts are not incorporated. Our primary data source is the China Family Panel Studies 2014 survey data, which contains a considerable size of samples from 29 provinces. The survey collected necessary and important information relevant to the instance analysis. When any important fiscal component is not directly identifiable in the survey, it can be imputed based on known policy rules, together with other available information in the survey and the national account data. Now I'll show some main results. First is the impact on poverty. This table shows the Gini coefficient for market income, disposable income, consumable income, and final income. As we can see, the urban areas exhibit higher pre-fiscal inequality comparing to the rural areas. The pre-fiscal inequality is the highest in the central region, followed by the eastern and the western regions. The disposable income Gini of each sample group decreased comparing to the corresponding indicators of market income. This means the combined effect of direct taxes and direct transfers was equalizing for each sample group. In contrast, the combined effect of indirect taxes and subsidies is unequalizing, as the inequality measures using consumable income are higher than those using disposable income. Besides, income transfers were equalizing for all sample groups. By comparing the inequality indicators for final income with those of market income, we know the fiscal system decreased inequality for all sample groups. This table shows the marginal contributions of fiscal interventions in reducing inequality for each sample group. When considering both the cash and the non-cash portions of the fiscal system, the personal income tax, contributions to Social Security, value-added tax are always equalizing. The consumption tax is always unequalizing. Direct cash transfers, contributory pensions, indirect subsidies, and income transfers are always equalizing. So these are pretty standard and similar to what one tends to find in other countries. Usually, the only unequalizing component are indirect taxes. To assess the impact of the fiscal system on urban-rural gap and the regional disparity, we decompose the TEL index into the within-group component and between-group component. As we can see, the between urban-rural component accounts 4% of overall market income TEL and contributes 4.5% to the disposable income TEL and 4.3% to consumable income and the final income TEL. This indicates that although the fiscal system decreased the total inequality within urban inequality and within rural inequality, it results in an increase of the urban-rural gap. Also, the between region component accounts 3.4% of the market income tale, while it contributes 3.2% to final income tale. This indicates the fiscal system has been effective in reducing regional inequality. This table shows the results on poverty, comparing poverty indicators of market income and those of disposable income. We know direct transfers, net of personal income tax, and contributions to Social Security are poverty reducing. When we add the impact of indirect taxes, net of indirect subsidies, we noticed an undesirable result. The fiscal system increased vulnerable poverty in the poor rural areas and also in the 3 regions, which means that the fiscal system has driven some people who were not vulnerable poor into vulnerable poverty in larger numbers than helping the vulnerable poor escape their conditions. So the conclusion based on our results are the following. The fiscal system has been inequality reducing at the countrywide level and in the rural and urban areas, as well as in each economic region. On the tax side, personal income tax, contributions to Social Security, and the value-added tax are equalizing for all sample groups, while consumption tax is unequalizing for all sample groups. On the spending side, direct transfers, indirect subsidies, and in-kind transfers are always equalizing for all sample groups. The fiscal system reduced the inequality between the poor and the richer regions, but widened the urban-rural income gap. For poverty, we find direct transfers, net of personal income tax, and contributions to Social Security reduce the poverty incidence. When further adding the impact of indirect taxes, net of indirect subsidies, we notice the fiscal system increase the moderate poverty in the poor rural areas.